that guy that just interrupts and jumps in and doesn't think, the other guy that pauses and goes slow. I was thinking,
Mhm.
yeah, you're that guy that's always real thoughtful and slow. And I'm the guy that jumps in. I remember, a lot of times we'd be you'd be talking to somebody, or I'd jump in and you go, Robert, and like, slow down. I thought, I actually like this guy a lot as I was getting to know you, because you actually, were very good to slow me down instead of
Good,
just like,
good.
to get react, because that is my tendency to just,
Yeah,
yeah, I got the answer. Meet me, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Okay, I got a bunch more questions I want to ask, and I may weave some of those in, but I want to give the guys uh time to ask you some questions as well. But before we go into some Q&A with the guys, it's just one more question. In the masculine in relationship, the book is a threefold plan. There's three core principles to
Hmm.
masculine leadership. And again, we could talk about so many questions. What's the difference between leadership and control? Guys ask me that all the time. When I talk about men about setting the tone and taking the lead, they always go, "All right, Dr. Glover, I know you say take control." I go, "No, I never use that word. I never say take control. I don't know how to control anybody." Right. It's a big enough job controlling me, but to control anybody else or any other situation, I don't know how. So, just what the difference between masculine and control is so hard for guys to grasp. But let me just give us those three core points of the masculine in relationship. What are those three core points of how to be a leader in your
Hmm.
relationship? Let's
Hmm.
share that just real briefly, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and let the guys uh, ask you questions related
Yeah.
to anything about any of your books or the things you teach. So just those 3 points quickly.
Yeah, what you're talking about is what I call the masculine blueprint. And I knew that I needed to give guys a framework because, if you just throw out a bunch of spaghetti of principles, then guys we won't lock into it. We need a framework. We need structure to understand. And so this is my attempt to provide that structure. It's also my attempt to provide my definition of what a masculine persona is. And it was important to me to have it work in a modern world. And there's a lot of teachings out there that don't quite work in the modern world. And it's not through pandering or watering down the model, but it's through distilling out the principles that have nothing to do with uh, controlling other people, as you said. They have everything to do with how you show up in the world. And I like to point guys to that your leadership is not about control, like you said, Robert. It's about an invitation. Your leadership is an invitation. She doesn't have to follow you, especially if you come with a weak ass lead or a non-existent one. Like she's sure as hell not going to follow you, and she shouldn't. Um, but if you bring a strong, attuned, wise leadership, it's an invitation to her to opt in. And if she doesn't want to, then great. That's her choice. More often than not, when you come with an attuned, wise, intelligent leadership, she does want to follow your lead. That's part of the feminine, and um, so the masculine blueprint has three parts, three elements is what I call them. The first is respond versus react, and so this is a quality of a man that's very grounded, non-reactive. There's a stillness in him and a choicefulness in him that you can just feel. And we worked on the choicefulness piece through these intention exercises that we just did. Um, so this is the part where you really have to learn to ground your nervous system. The number one way that I like to do that is through embodiment exercise, but you can also do things like therapy or EMDR or other things that actually can go heal trauma. It's one thing to have a jacked nervous system. It's another thing to have real trauma in there. And most of us have some form of trauma. You know this as a former therapist. So trauma work is a good way to do this. Embodiment is the number one way to do this. There's also some other ways. And so I one of the things I've just released is this new video course on the art of relational masculinity, which somebody on this call, Mike McEwen, has gone through, and I think he really liked it. But I talk about some other non-intuitive. So I talk about embodiment. I talk about therapeutic ways in the course. But I talk about some non-intuitive ways, like spaciousness. And spaciousness is something that a lot of guys don't always have, especially in busy lives. If we have job and wife and kids, spaciousness. we have no outer spaciousness because all our time's spoken for, and therefore we don't have an inner spaciousness that allows us to be less reactive in this world. So in the course, I go through some non-intuitive ways to do that. And you want to attack this from all angles. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a more grounded nervous system. And at that point, everything changes because you start living out of choice. And that's where things get different. So that's element one of the blueprint, which is, again, respond versus react. Element two is provide structure. This is the quality of a man who first and foremost has inner clarity about what he wants, what he needs, what his boundaries and preferences are, but also what the world needs and what the moment calls for. It's not just about him and what do I want, but it's also like being attuned to your partner as well, and then being able to take all of that and form that into some form of directionality. And that's structure, that's clarity, that's decisiveness, that's a way forward. And I don't think anybody's surprised. Like, women love it when we're decisive, not when we're domineering and trying to control them. They hate that. But that's very different than having clarity and being action oriented. And so provide structure is the second element of the blueprint. And the third element is create safety. So what we're talking about is physical, financial, and emotional safety. And a woman that doesn't feel safe and trusting is a woman who is closed to you, or closed in general. It's one of the biggest determinants of how open and forgiving and delightful and nurturing and all the shit I like, all the shit you like about your woman. Those don't come out when she's not trusting and not feeling safe. I don't talk about physical and financial that much in the book. I'll probably do that in the sequel. But I do talk about emotional safety a whole lot. And there's so many things you can do. And again, this course I told you about, we go even deeper than the book, and I teach ways to build more emotional connection, more ways to receive her emotional state, more ways to take care of her. And this is all we go deep into it into the online course. So there's lots of things that you can do to make her feel safe, and things are going to get a lot better when she does. I'll just say that very simply. So those are the three elements of the blueprint.
Great. I love it. I was thinking of that. Part of my responding versus reacting, especially in relationship, has been to drop my story about what's happening here. Why is she doing that? And just now, if Lupita has any strong reaction towards me, especially, if I can ground, settle, and just ask myself one of three questions: is my woman not feeling sufficiently loved right now? Is my woman not feeling sufficiently connected right now? Is my woman not feeling sufficiently safe right now? And is there anything I can do about any of those three things in this moment?
Yeah.
Oh man, that just shifts everything.
Yeah. Because all three of those things you just mentioned have to do with her nervous system. And if I've learned anything, forget the facts. Attend to her nervous system first, and your own.
Yeah. Pay attention. What is the emotional statement she's making, not the factual statement?
Oh yeah. I mean, when she's jacked, the information that coming out of her is going to be just fucked.
Yeah.
But once you help her, it's not your job, but you can co-regulate her, and that's one of the biggest things. That's where I'm most successful, when I co-regulate my woman first.
Yeah. Calm is contagious.
Yeah.
Calm is contagious.
Tell me more, baby. I didn't realize that. And I want to know you, and I want to know more, and I want you to feel safe. So tell me more. And then receive her in a very open-hearted way. And again, in the online course I go through, there's a whole module on how to receive her, emotional input. So that's curiosity. I think it's a pretty short answer for your question. Curiosity. And then be ready for what comes back, because guarantee it's not going to feel good. Biggest act of love that you can give your woman is to actually listen to her and be big enough of a man to be able to take the little ouches. It's going to hurt. Just know that it's not the end of the world. Like, our women say shit about us all the time, and sometimes it hurts. And our ability to look for the kernel of truth in what she expresses is powerful.
I love that. The curiosity, and even asking, is there more? I was getting real curious. Is there more?
Yeah.
Because there always is. There's more. And if we can ground and listen, there's always more. All right, what do you do if your woman just wants to be in control? Because I was even going to ask you this, GS. A lot of women have to take control in life because they can't expect their man to lead. Do you find it's hard for some women, say on the dance floor, for example? 'Cause that's where I ran, have a hard time letting go of control as you're trying to lead.
They do, yeah. And you guys are there's similarities here, but it's two different things. So let me respond to all this. So yes, some women have a hard time letting go. It's either their own wounding or it's the fact that their man hasn't stepped up reliably and filled the vacuum of leadership. And it's usually the latter. You heard me say earlier that men's work is often about awareness training. And I'm just going to give you a hit. It might be wrong because I don't know you. So just take my hit of this. You seem very distracted by this and disturbed by it. And I feel like you're letting the world pull your attention into something that is not core to your mission in life. And I want you to just take that in. That's one. Two is everybody can do whatever the fuck they want. And if some woman wants a female-led relationship, what that means is it's still polarity. It's just she wants to be in her masculine and she wants to be with a man who's in more of a feminine. That's great. If she finds a man that's down with that, I say more power to you. Cool. I love that for you. Not for me, but I love it for you. And let them do what they do. These polarities are chosen. Okay. And everybody here is probably choosing to be in the masculine, but let other people choose other things. Number one is judgments often cover up something else. Anger is similar. When we get angry at somebody, it's often covering up fear, shame, hurt. Mm-hmm. And judgments are the same way. I have to have a story about you to make sense so that I feel okay. And if I can kind of paint you with my story as a bad person, then I feel a little safer over here. Mm-hmm. So you dig into that. So that's one. What the hell was the second? Number two is judgments are just stories. People act a certain way and sometimes we don't understand it. And so we come up with a story that we think explains. So your story could be that, GS is kind of a callous asshole because he does BDSM and that impacts women negatively. That's a story about me that you're using to make sense of what little facts you observe or know. What's cool is to actually share your stories, to break your stories away from your observations and then own it as a story and share it with the person, like people in your life, and you have a judgment. It's like, yeah, I saw you get up and walk away before I was done speaking. And like my story was that you were completely disinterested in what I had to say and that you actually don't value me as a friend. And I just know I had that story and I just know underneath I was a little hurt. And you just share it in this non-blaming way, but you know how to identify and break off your stories from actually what you experience. So stories and experience are very different.
I've talked about this in the past, but several years ago, I got to quit being judgmental. I got to quit. And when I realized I was being judgmental about being judgmental, which doesn't get rid of judgmentalness, and I started just being the observer of whenever I'm judgmental, I go, why in this moment am I being judgmental? Get that curious thing again. And it's interesting because, again, GS and I have been in the same men's program. I started a policy that every new year when the new guys would come in, whoever I had the most judgment of, and always did, I told myself I have to reach out and contact those people personally and get to know them to see if my judgment held water at all, or was the story. And I'd tell people this. I said, so if you get a call from me, like a request to get on Zoom early on, it's because I got a lot of judgment about your hair or your beard or your mannerisms. It's human nature to be judgmental. It's a safety issue. But we can observe it, not judge it.
So you need somebody to talk to about some of these feelings and some of the feelings that it's created inside of you. So I suspect that you're internalizing too much of this and you need to get more relational. That could be a buddy. That could be a therapist. That could be a female friend. Like having some female friends would be really great. They don't have to be girlfriends or love interests, but that's what I would offer. And Robert, I'll give you 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Yeah.
My second wife was very empathic, and Lupita is very empathic in some different ways. Lupita says, I can sense women's intentions. I can sense other people's intentions. And I believe her. And I said, my second wife is very empathic. The problem is that most empathic people they kind of have a knowing that they're empathic, but they don't get to the extent that they do take on everybody else's feelings around them. I'm going to suggest you find a coach who coaches people on what to do with that. Because what you have to learn to do is distinguish what are your internal sensations and what are everybody else's. And again, the ability to comment on it, as GS said, is helpful because when I was married to my second wife, I thought, well, I'm not like that. I can't feel anybody's. I can't even feel my own stuff, let alone anybody else's. But I did start paying attention. And like examples, if I was doing therapy and I had a break between clients, somebody walked in the room. As soon as I walked in, if I noticed a headache, like just a throb in the back of my neck, and I learned to start paying attention. I thought, wait a minute, I wasn't feeling that before they walked in the room. And I would often say, I'm curious, do you got like a headache right back here in the back of your head? Like 98% of the time they go, oh yeah, it's been just bugging me all day long. I thought, fuck, that's kind of amazing that I could actually feel their stuff and get it right. So what you need, I think, is an experienced person who would teach you how to distinguish your stuff from other people's stuff and how to move their energy states through you, where they just wash over you, not come into your own nervous system. And that's going to take an experienced person, experienced empathic person who's learned how to deal with that. And because that's not me, I can't teach it, and I don't know that GS can either. But there are people out there that can teach you that, and then that lets you interact with people and just know what's yours and not. And it does help if you can to comment on it, if that's at all possible. Not everybody's open to hearing, yeah. A quick example, I had a massage therapist that I got to know really well. We got to be really good friends. And I remember at times she'd be massaging me. And I'll just say this, I'd feel, kind of like my hand would want to touch her. I'd want to touch. It was like this overwhelming, like my hand on its own. And I remember I just got to ask, so I'd ask her because I knew her well enough. I said, are you ovulating? And she goes, oh yeah, my kundalini's been way through the roof and I'm just horny as hell and I got all this energy going on. And I go, oh, I was right. I had a sense, a knowing of the heat, the fire that was there, but our culture doesn't teach us how to comment on that stuff. So you got to do it with safe people. But yeah, find a coach that can help you with the process.
She might have like kind of a touch of OCD or something where there's you're up against something around mental wiring that is very difficult if you're not a professional. It's like anything, speaking your needs. You speak them from the heart. And maybe, I don't know how you ask, and we probably don't have enough time to go into it, but if you can really convey your longing for more connected relational time with her and how much you're suffering, and not in a blamey way or that she's doing something wrong, but it's like, can you speak from, like, can you, and this is rhetorical, but, can you find that longing for more closeness and relationality with her and with the family? Can you feel that longing? And then can you speak from that place to her and share that from that place? Mm-hmm. A lot of times there's no feeling in what we convey. Even if we speak our emotions, often we don't. But if we do, like, and we speak our needs, like, it doesn't come with the feeling aspect. All communication is energetic and informational. And we often only give the informational. And then even that comes away a little blamey. Speak from that place. I'm not intentionally trying to continue to plug my course, but I am. There's a whole module on how to speak from a deeper place. And it's something that's so powerful in building an emotional connection. That might help your wife break through her, I'll just call it OCD, but whatever this thing is that she's like, beyond that, we'd have to go a lot deeper. But starting to speak from a deeper place about your needs and longings is a great place to start.
My sense is they've got somewhat of a reverse polarity. Let's connect. Feminine. She's going, no, do, masculine. Yep. And I actually see that a lot, especially, most women have to be in their masculine almost all the time, especially if they have a career, especially if they have children. All of that stuff is masculine stuff, right? And I found that a lot of women, and maybe you've seen this in your partner as well, once they get in their masculine of doing, they're not real good at turning that off and coming back into their feminine of being relational and open. and
Yeah.
the flow of love. And I talk a lot about leading your feminine, leading your feminine partner back into her feminine. Could you give him like maybe just 30 seconds of how to reverse that polarity in a leadership kind of way
Yeah.
of inviting her to be, more in her feminine state as he takes the lead, which is masculine?
Yeah. Um, I like this. This is another take on it. We could come at it from a number of different angles. And so let's test this out. It's a theory. The theory could be that you may not be providing enough masculine structure. So she's constantly feeling like she's got to fill the vacuum. I don't know that's true, but if you were a coaching client, I would advance that theory and we would check it out. So have you created a vacuum by maybe not enough leadership around like the shit that's got to get done around the house? Because one of the ways to do what Robert said of reverse that polarity is to fill the vacuum first. That's often, I mean, there's other angles on it, but the first one I always try is like, are you leaving a vacuum of leadership? So one of the things that would get her out of her masculine could possibly be that you provide that masculine first, and then she'll over time learn that she can relax. Like you have to kind of out masculine them when you're with a really powerful woman sometimes. And so that would be another theory. I don't know if that's true for your dynamic or not, but it's the theory I would check out.
It could be as simple as say, hey, babe, let's get together. Let's get the kitchen cleaned up, get the dishes done, and then we're going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
So he's taking
exactly.
leadership on things she wants, in the same sentence, leadership on what he wants.
Yeah,
Created
exactly.
that container.